Welcome to Honeywell Baton Rouge. The Honeywell Baton Rouge team takes great pride in producing a variety of beneficial chemicals we all use daily, like refrigerants. Also monomers, which are used in plastics for packaging medicines, and calcium chloride, which is used to help safely drill oil and gas wells. These chemicals can be hazardous. That's why your new team members at Honeywell Baton Rouge live and work by a strict set of safety rules and emergency procedures that you'll be expected to follow from this point forward without exception. The Honeywell team is also committed to keeping the environment safe and clean for all our neighbors and friends in the Baton Rouge area. When arriving for your shift, team members must park only in their designated areas. All contract employees must also complete the Honeywell Baton Rouge Safety Course and present their Baton Rouge Safety Council card to a security officer before entering the plant. All containers or hand-carried items are always subject to be searched at any time. Alcohol, illegal drugs, explosives, and firearms are strictly forbidden on site at all times. Security at the Honeywell Baton Rouge site is also a top priority. Any suspicious activity should always be reported to a supervisor or to security immediately. Pictures or videos are also never allowed inside the plant for any reason unless approved by your supervisor. Once inside, smoking is only permitted in clearly marked designated areas. Not promptly reporting a hazard or horseplay can lead to serious injuries or death and are grounds for immediate termination. You must also report any injury or illness, no matter how minor, to your supervisor immediately. You're also never allowed to operate or service any equipment on site without proper training and certification, and that includes following correct lock, tag, try procedures, which could save your life. The first rule you must learn is that lock, tag, try locks must never be used for anything except to lock out equipment, with no exceptions. It's also important for you to stay alert and know where you are in the facility at all times. You must also sign in with control room personnel before gaining access to any unit, and never enter unauthorized areas or leave your designated area. Okay, you've already learned you're joining a team at Honeywell that works by a strict set of safety rules and regulations. These are in place to help keep you and your team safe and to help prevent accidents before they happen. When riding in any motorized vehicle, including golf carts, always remember to buckle up if you have that option. Seatbelts are always mandatory when available on site. Speed limits are clearly posted all over the site, so drive carefully. Obey all traffic signs, and always be certain to yield to foot traffic at all times. Once you arrive at your work area, park in a designated area and be certain to turn your engine off and leave your keys in the ignition and set your parking brake. After completing your work, it's your responsibility to immediately clear your job site of any tools or debris. And never dispose of any chemicals without getting assistance from a team member in the environmental department. Any equipment or materials removed from the site will also need a material gate pass before you leave the plant. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is one of your first lines of defense in keeping you safe on the job and is always mandatory at Honeywell Baton Rouge. ANSI-approved hard hats, safety glasses with side shields, hearing protection, and gloves that are in good condition with no rips or tears are always required on site. A long-sleeve shirt, long pants, and safety-toed boots or shoes are also mandatory. And clothing must always be tucked in neat to avoid being caught in moving machinery or equipment. You must always use hearing protection where signs indicate it's mandatory or in any high-noise area. And all facial hair must be neatly trimmed when wearing a fit test respirator. And you must always verify you have a tight seal before starting your work. Other special PPE like a face shield, goggles, or an acid suit and chemical gloves may be required on some jobs. Fall protection, including a full body harness and lanyard, is also required for working 4 feet above ground or higher. Finally, it's your responsibility to help manage your own safety by making certain your PPE is clean and in good working condition. And remember, make certain you replace any lost or damaged gear immediately. Now that you're dressed for safety, it's time to learn how to safely handle the tools and equipment that you'll be working with from day to day. Worn or damaged cards or electrical tools that are not properly grounded can be a killer. You should always inspect your cards. Make certain they're in good condition before beginning your work. It always makes certain you're using a ground fault circuit interrupter or GFCI, and that you're properly grounded anytime you're working with electric tools. Working at heights can also put you at great risk of severe injury. So before you climb, first, make certain your ladder is made of a non-conductive material such as fiberglass. The ladder should have safety shoes that are in good condition, be placed on level ground, and be securely tied off before you begin your task. And under no circumstances are you ever allowed to stand on the top 2 rungs of your ladder to reach your work. You'll also notice lots of scaffolding on site. A properly anchored safety harness must always be worn when building or working from a scaffold 4 feet or more above the ground. All scaffolds are always marked with a green, yellow, or red tag indicating their safety level. Always make certain you read these tags before beginning your work. Green indicates the scaffold is safe and ready to use. A yellow tag means to use caution, check for hazards, and use fall protection when required. And a red tag means not to use that scaffold. Scaffolding must always be securely tied off, and wood platforms must only be constructed with scaffold-grade planking that's in good condition. Safely using a ladder to help avoid falls should always be one of your top priorities on site. Never under any circumstances climb on conduit or a valve handle. Climbing on pumps should also be avoided. And all open excavations, overhead work, and holes in a work area must always be barricaded with rigid materials. Equipment operators must not only be qualified but also authorized to operate machinery anywhere at the Honeywell Baton Rouge site. Flagmen wearing safety vests are required for all transporting and hoisting jobs on a cherry picker or a crane. And before lifting any loads, slings must always be inspected and replaced if they're worn or damaged. And no one except the operator is allowed to ride on any equipment that does not have an approved passenger seat. Even with you and your team working safely, emergency situations can always arise. That's why it's your responsibility to always be able to locate and properly use the emergency equipment in your area. Safety showers and eye wash stations are located all over the site and are clearly marked. Escape respirators can be found throughout all process areas. Fire hydrants and extinguishers are strategically placed throughout the site and should never be blocked for any reason, with no exceptions. During the course of your work, there's always a chance you may come in contact with a chemical. If that happens, immediately rinse the contaminated area in the nearest safety shower and get medical attention right away. If your eyes are affected, flush them continuously for 15 minutes. And always remember, get medical attention following any chemical contamination as soon as possible. And all injuries, no matter how minor, must be reported to a supervisor immediately. The safest and most efficient way to monitor all hazardous work at the Honeywell Baton Rouge site is with a permit. Hazardous operations requiring permits include confined space entry, line breaking, and hot work. All team members must fill out a work permit, verify preparation, then follow all safety instructions to the letter before starting any hazardous work. General work permits are also issued on site for operations including live electrical work, scaffolding, painting, housekeeping, and excavations. When excavating, a bucket watch must be present at all times. Their job is to help the operator avoid striking any foreign objects during the dig. No team member is ever allowed inside an excavation until the digging has been completed. Excavated dirt shall not be stored within 2 feet of the edge of the hole. And finally, for your safety, excavations of more than 4 feet must always be properly barricaded or secured. A line breaking permit is required when either opening or working on all connected fittings, valves, pumps, vessels, or process lines. Take extra precautions when performing line breaks and always assume lines or equipment may still be under extreme pressure or contain hazardous materials. Additional PPE like an acid suit, rubber boots, inserts, and gloves may also be required. You'll also need a hot work permit for all hot jobs, no matter how big or small. If the work area contains combustibles, a fire watch must monitor the hot work area for flammable or explosive atmospheres. 100% spark containment must always be the goal. Confined spaces are also potential killers that always require permits. A confined space can lack oxygen or produce dangerous airborne contaminants due to poor natural ventilation. Before work begins, the space must be isolated from all process and utility services. And confined spaces must always be properly ventilated at all times to prevent dangerous vapors from building up. Before going inside, you'll need to tie off to a retrieval device. An attendant will monitor your work and keep a head count of everyone inside until the job is safely completed. And rescue equipment must always be present near the entrance of a confined space in case of an emergency. Potentially dangerous energy sources that you may encounter on site include electricity, hydraulic, pneumatic, mechanical, chemical, thermal, and radioactivity. Proper lock tag try starts with every dangerous energy source being disabled to help prevent any unexpected startup or release. Locks and tags are then placed on all energy control devices. An authorized employee will then test the equipment to verify isolation and that any built-up pressures have been safely released. A group lock box will also be used when there are multiple energy sources. Authorized employees will lock out the energy sources, then verify that the equipment is safe. And they will keep their personal lock on the group lockbox until the work is safely completed. You'll notice different departments at Honeywell and contractors are issued different colored locks. The various colors simply indicate who is doing the work. Check with your supervisor if you have any questions. The team at Honeywell Baton Rouge maintains a safety record that they're very proud of by staying alert to the flammable, combustible, and toxic hazards in their work areas. This site is covered by the Process Safety Management Standard. Hazards on site include HF or hydrofluoric acid, chlorine gas, and hydrochloric acid or HCl. National Fire Protection Association 704 warning labels clearly identify the hazards of all chemicals in use on site. These diamond-shaped labels use a rating system of 0 to 4 to indicate the severity of the hazard you may encounter. 0 representing minimal risk, 4 being the most severe. Safety data sheets, or an SDS, is also required for all chemicals on site. The SDS is an important resource for you because it contains complete details about all chemical hazards and treatment information in case you do become exposed. A copy of the SDS can be accessed on any company computer on site. Large quantities of hydrofluoric acid are processed at Honeywell Baton Rouge, so working safely around HF is a top priority. HF forms a dense white vapor cloud when released into the atmosphere and is extremely hazardous as it causes deep tissue damage if it penetrates the skin. When working around hydrofluoric acid, always wear proper PPE and take care to make certain it's in good condition because your safety depends on it. And areas of potential HF exposure must always be isolated with safety signs and barricades. In the event of an incident at Honeywell Baton Rouge, you'll hear either a loud fire warning or a gas alarm. Blue lights will also begin flashing if there's a leak in the CTFE process unit. If there's a fire in your work area, quickly but calmly evacuate to the nearest assembly point. Talk with your supervisor about what action you should take if the fire is not in your immediate area. You'll also notice many orange-colored windsocks located throughout the plant. You should get in the habit of checking wind direction often during your day, so you'll know what direction to proceed in case of an emergency. For chemical or gas leaks, listen carefully to the public address announcements for safety and shelter instructions, and quickly but calmly begin to move crosswind from the affected area. Meaning, if the wind is blowing north to south, you should move east to west until you reach one of the designated assembly areas on site. You should memorize these locations, and once you arrive, be certain to always scan your access card in one of the muster readers so that all team members can be accounted for. Just remember, if there is an incident, you can always help prevent a situation from getting out of hand by calling security. Simply dial 0 from any computer or phone and let an officer know your location and what your emergency is. Again, welcome to the Honeywell Baton Rouge team. From this point forward, remember your safety and the safety of all your team members is your responsibility.